was skinny as a kid, skinny as an adult, skinny as a teenager, an adolescent, a young adult, and never worried about my weight, always rail thin, always active, ate everything that wasn't red hot or nailed down, and suddenly at about 35 years old, bam, I exploded like a kernel of popcorn. And that happens to a whole lot of people because insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia worsen with age. And when you reach sort of a critical point, then it happens. And that's why a lot of people can almost pinpoint, like I can, the time that it happened to them like that.
You know, people who are, through main force of will, able to stick to a low-calorie, low-fat diet are miserable most of the time because they're hungry all the time.
If you eat one of those, 1 gram of fat, 50 grams of carb meals, you're not going to be particularly satisfied because 50 grams of carb, that's 10 teaspoons of sugar. That converts to 10 teaspoons of sugar. If you've got a normal blood sugar, that represents 1 teaspoon of sugar dissolved in your blood. Now suddenly you're adding 10 teaspoons to the mix. And unless your body wants your blood sugar to go screeching to just astronomical heights, which it doesn't, it's going to do something about that. And what it does is it produces insulin, which reduces the blood sugar by driving it into the cells. And when it drives it into the cells, it drives that little bit of fat probably in the cell too. And so you have nothing out there to really nourish you because everything's stored away in cells where it can't be gotten to.
The signal to the fat cell when insulin levels are elevated is to hold calories and not let calories out. The body doesn't need calories to come out, it thinks, because insulin's up, which must mean I've got plenty to eat. I've got too much to eat. I've got stuff I need to put into storage. So no calories come out, stuff goes in. So people who are overweight and insulin resistant eat a meal, a big portion of that gets sent into storage because the signal, the metabolic biochemical signal is insulin is up, I should store calories. So those calories are not available to the cells throughout the body to make energy, which is their currency. That's what they want. They got to make energy. And the calories are not there to do that. They're being stored.
The strongest, if not the strongest stimulus to feed, or in other words, one of the strongest hunger drives is a falling blood sugar. Not necessarily a low blood sugar that's stable, but a falling blood sugar, a blood sugar that's going from high even to normal. When it's falling, it drives the center in the brain that says, I'm hungry, I've got to get something to eat. And that's why, the Chinese restaurant deal about you just eat Chinese food and you're hungry an hour later, it's because mainly it's high in carbohydrates, a lot of rice, a lot of carb. And what happens is blood sugar goes up quickly and then it comes back down quickly, and when it falls, it drives this strong hunger response.
The woman who buys that prepackaged, healthy, low-fat, high-carb dinner at the grocery store is going to also then eat a big serving of low-fat ice cream later because she's going to get hungry.
The body's got all kinds of ways to manufacture glucose out of other things, but it doesn't have any way to manufacture protein. It has a way to manufacture certain kind of fats out of sugar, out of carbohydrate. It can make a carbon-16 fat called palmitic acid, which is a saturated fat. It can make that, but it can't make a lot of the fats that you need, which have got to come in from the diet. So it's never made sense to me to go on a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet when your body has all the machinery it needs to make carbohydrates but can't make the fat that it needs and certainly can't make the protein. And any kind of diet that's low-fat is generally a low-protein diet. So it's just this whole idea of having a low-protein, low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet has never made sense based on how the body works.
The people who are able to stick to the low-fat diet and lose weight, and they do, you can. If you get calories low enough, you're going to lose weight. Do so at the price of their lean body mass, at the price of their mood, usually. You become depressed when fat is low, and particularly dietary cholesterol are low. The human mind becomes depressed. Even the primate mind monkeys become depressed on a low cholesterol diet. And so they end up kind of blue and miserable and hungry, and if they fight their way through it, they get to the end of it, and the diet's over, and they end up gaining all their weight back.
The low-carb diet does not run up insulin levels. Therefore, the food that comes in isn't necessarily partitioned away in the cells and held captive there. The nutrients stay out to where the cells can use them. The enzymes that get them into the proper cells work better when insulin levels are lower. And so your body is actually nourished with these things, and it doesn't give off the hunger signals because it's got plenty to eat internally at the cellular level.
When you're eating fat and protein, you send a signal to the brain. The minute protein and fat enter the first part of the small intestine, a signal goes to the brain through a hormone that's there that's released called cholecystokinin, that goes to the brain and says, oh, we've eaten, we're full. The way that the carbohydrate, just a big carb meal can do that is if you eat a huge carb meal and the stretch receptors in the stomach send you that signal. Well, if you're eating a low-calorie amount of food, you're not going to have enough to stretch the stretch receptors and say, I've had a big meal of carbs, therefore I'm not hungry. And the only signal you'll get is an insulin spike, which makes you hungry.
If you don't eat carbohydrates and you eat a lot of calories, your blood sugar stays stable, and the fat in the diet, again, triggers some hormones actually in the GI tract that feed back to this hunger center in the brain and say, hey, I'm full, I'm full, I'm full, and those signals go on for a while, and that's why you don't get as hungry after a fat meal.
People would be dieting along and they'd be losing weight pretty successfully, and then their weight loss would begin to slow. And the thing that I always would tell them is, when I looked at their diet diaries and saw that things were okay, they were eating the right foods, but they were not eating enough protein. And I would tell them, you need to eat more to lose. Okay, that sounds counterintuitive, but more of the right thing. So by eating more protein, a little bit more of good calories, you send the right signals to the body to lose. And those signals are hormonal signals. So structuring a diet that has an adequate amount of protein for that body, that has an adequate amount of good quality fat, which is really where most of the calories are going to come from, that is controlled in carbohydrate, sets a hormonal stage with insulin low, glucagon available, to open the spigot to the fat stores. That's the hormonal setting that's got to be there.
Fat head, yeah. I'm gonna start thinking smarter. Fat head, yeah. I'm gonna start thinking smarter.